conversation. My name is Mobola Sandra, and the program is live on YouTube for this morning. We're having some slight issues with our Facebook, but not to worry. We're live on YouTube, so you can as well join in on YouTube. Just type in 𝗵𝗏 98.3 FM on YouTube, and you see us live, and you can drop your comments in the live chat section of YouTube. All right, as I mentioned earlier, I will not be doing this alone. Fuhad Saheed will be joining in via the phone line to give analysis to the stories that we're going to be treating this morning. Of course, there's a new program that will be making its debut this morning, our 𝗵𝗏 98.3 FM. Remember last week we said that there's a lot of programs that will be making their debut this week. All right, so by 10 a.m. this morning we'll be having the big talk with Mobola Sandra, and of course by 1 p.m. Midweek politics with 𝗃𝗏 𝗪𝗃 and Saheed Fuhad. Just for those of us who join us on Political Roundtable on Sundays, we know how very, very informative and educative it always is, and how very intense and intriguing. So the conversation continues with midweek politics every Wednesdays by 1 p.m. Big talk every Wednesdays as well by 10 a.m. So stay tuned for a lot of conversations, very important issue-based conversations right here at mainland 98.3 FM. Now let's start with trends in the papers. Good morning, Fuad. How are you doing? Hello, Fuad. Good morning. Oh, okay. Just stay with us, not to worry. Well, we'll definitely connect with you very, very soon. I don't know why that always happens every time we try to connect with Fuad in the mornings. But then stay with us. We will be right back. We have our stories here with us. We'll start with the Guardian newspaper. We have the major headline on the front page of the Guardian. Humanitarian ministry has been on the spotlight for quite a long while now, and it's been quite an interesting one that we've been discussing. Both the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, that's Sadia Umar Farouk, and of course the newly suspended Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, that is Betta Edu. It's been quite an interesting run following the stories. And of course today on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, actually across the major headlines, it's the major headline across all of the papers this morning, the Betta Edu ministry, humanitarian scandal. That's the major headline across all the ministries, across the papers this morning. So Nigerians want probe expanded to other poverty alleviation schemes, and that is the story here. It's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. So we have here as riders to the stories: interrogators grill Edu, Umar Farouk, banks and chiefs. 438 million naira contract scandal. Tunji Ojo in Aso Villa says it's all good. Edu's suspension commendable, but not enough, says Atiku Abubakar. And we also have here why Tinubu acted swiftly on fraud allegations. That's coming from APC. And finally, 𝗪𝗪 CUP back Tinubu on fight against corruption. Hello? Oh, good morning, Fuad. Unfortunately, I am the only one that can hear you. Our listeners cannot hear you, so please be on standby as I reconnect with you. Just not to worry, stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, many Nigerians are calling for the expansion of the interrogations of into various poverty eradication schemes that have lifted at least 133 million multidimensionally poor citizens, despite billions of naira invested in the schemes. According to them, the recent revelation and probe into these issues needs to be looked at, especially at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Recently, just as we highlighted, we've been having different stories or different reports from that particular ministry. There's been a lot of focus, especially also on that particular ministry. Although there have been claims of the number of people impacted by poverty alleviation schemes, the number of poor Nigerians has continued to rise, with government policies negatively impacting the vast population. Fuhad, we have you finally joining in. Apologies for the back and forth. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra.
All right, and let's carry on. I'm well, thank you very much. How's your morning so far?
Yeah, fine. It's been fine.
All right. Good. So, Fuhad, looking at the spotlight that has been on the humanitarian ministry in recent times, now Nigerians want a probe to into other poverty alleviation schemes. The fact that there have been claims that a number of people have been impacted by these poverty alleviation schemes, but the number of poor Nigerians is still on the rise. So it's a serious cause for concern when we have billions of naira being expended and there's no results in particular. So aside from the fact that the past minister for this ministry and also the suspended minister for this ministry are currently being interrogated, do you think yes, we should actually look deeper into this? Remember, one of our callers or some of our callers have also mentioned a total scrapping of the ministry, because we haven't really been getting as much results as we would expect, compared to the amount of funds that have been disbursed into that ministry.
Well, again, these arguments, may not end. Whether, we've achieved anything with all of this so-called poverty alleviation intervention, starting from even the time of former President 𝗪𝗪 Jonathan to when President Buhari got there, and then we had this particular ministry created, and now, Better Eddie taking over the ministry, and then we're having this scandal. Like I said yesterday, I don't believe that the ministry should be scrapped. I honestly don't believe that ministry should be scrapped. I just think that the model, the working model, is what we should try to review. And I think that in reviewing the model, we have to look at what is more sustainable. An idea that a more sustainable idea to tackling poverty. Because again, if people are saying that, look, these interventions have helped, then they should juxtapose that to the figures we are getting from the NBS, Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, as to the level of poverty in the country. Do you understand what I'm saying, Sandra? The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, as at the last count, said that, look, more than 133 million Nigerians were living below poverty line, and that, look, more than 20 million were also going to be joining the list, if you understand what I'm saying. So the reality is that whatever intervention we're doing, I'm saying it and I'll continue to say it, you can't throw money at poverty. Money is not, you can't be dishing out cash, throwing monies around and expect that would in itself tackle the incidence of poverty in the country. It's not going to happen. There are more sustainable ways, you understand. First thing to look at is tackle unemployment, get people more employed. You understand what I'm saying? When people are employed, they're able to take care of themselves. They are able to earn a living. They're able to take care of their basic needs. So instead of looking at throwing cash around or giving rice and beans to people, why don't we look at a more sustainable way by first starting to look at the issue of unemployment? And how do you tackle unemployment? You have to look at indices that would engender entrepreneurship, that will engender manufacturing, production, so that people can be, engaged. How do we develop SMEs, for example? Can we begin to look at putting monies into SMEs? You understand what I'm saying? Look at people who can employ 3, 4, 5. That's the way to tackle poverty. Not, dashing people. I was looking at the picture of Better Eddie in Kogi State with the governor. And then people were carrying one big signboard like this. They were being given 20,000 naira. Like, what would 20,000 naira do? Convert that to dollar, Sandra. What does it give you? It's just ridiculous, and our politicians will come up with all of these ridiculous things.
All right, but what about the call for Nigerians for expansion of investigation into all the poverty eradication schemes that have failed to lift the mode of operation, or just as you have said, how these monies are being expended? But then Nigerians are now calling for an investigation into various poverty eradication schemes, as regards how do they do it, what do they do, who are the people that are benefiting from this and all of that. Do you think we should have that expansion?
Well, of course, we should have it if we have the capacity to really start and complete it. Because again, if you ask me, even all of these current probes, I'm not excited. I just take it. I'm a bit indifferent. I'll tell you. Yes, we have to follow the news because of our job. We have to keep reporting it because, of course, we have to get people informed. But the reality is that I'm not too excited, because this is not the first time we've had high-profile cases of probes into misappropriation of funds that have led us nowhere. If you understand what I'm saying. It's a good one that at least we are starting with this humanitarian ministry. It's a good one that at least the EFCC has invited most of the players, the former ministers, the current minister. We have it on good authority that Minister 𝗪𝗵𝘁𝘀 was also invited to the presidential villa yesterday, concerning his involvement, in this particular crisis. So it's good that we're starting from here, but I'm not too. I just want to be a bit indifferent until something tangible happens after all of these probes and investigations.
All right, let's also look at complicity in this conversation. You've mentioned now rightfully that aside from the minister being called, there are some other people that have also been invited. We also have here that CEOs and MDs of about 3 top commercial banks in the country have also been brought in, and the revelation or the issue is that there's a potential deliberate lapse in flagging suspicious activity by the banks, which is a crucial responsibility that is mandated by anti-financial crime laws and central bank directives. So the fact that some of these banks, there may be a potential deliberate lapse in flagging some suspicious activity, could have played a critical role in the brazen misappropriation of public funds. Do you agree?
I agree completely, Sandra. These things are not done in isolation. These things are not done in isolation, if you understand. Luckily, you have a complete understanding of what the rules are when it comes to suspicious transactions. There's a particular amount of money that must get into an account, and the banks are mandated to flag it. Not only flag it, alert the appropriate authorities, if you understand what I'm saying. But a lot of times, these things happen, back to back, and you will find that a lot of the banks are complicit. If you look at this particular story in the Guardian newspaper, we don't want to name the bank, but I think about 4 or 5 banks have also been named as investigations are ongoing as to how some of these monies were deposited in these banks without any notice, or notification of the appropriate authority. So, criminal activities of this nature, when it comes to huge misappropriation of funds, can never be done in isolation. It's always like a cartel, from the people moving the money to the banks. And a lot of these commercial banks who are desperate for this money. You understand, Sandra? They need these deposits. They need this money, to improve their own financial standing.
Yes, of course.
So it's good money for them. They just want the money to come. Sometimes account officers, branch bank managers who are on every big target just want these monies to come. They will even be the ones to tell them, don't worry, we know how to do it. Just bring in the money. And so it's always a collaboration of efforts from, the officials with the bankers, and it's not done in isolation. So again, when we're talking about systemic corruption, this is exactly what we're talking about. And the entire 𝗪𝗑C investigation on this one should also touch on activities of the bank, because most of these monies cannot be moved the way they are being moved without the complicities of these banks.
All right, so moving on now. Let's also look at 𝗪𝗪 now at this point. I have here Philip Frank Shaibu, former Vice President 𝗪𝗪 special assistant on public communication, has said that the suspension of 𝗪𝗪, although is commendable, but not enough. Fuhad, may I ask that you please reduce the volume of your radio set?
Okay, is it better now?
Hello? Okay, yes, so much better.
Is it better now?
Yes, thank you. All right, so there's a report here now that from Frank Shaibu saying that while Tinubu deserves commendation for suspending Edu, but that it is a belated move. Firstly, that she had no business being appointed as a minister in a sensitive ministry in the first place. There's also, putting against that, we also have the fact that he went further to say, to be fair, it's not only Edu that is involved in these shady transactions. More documents show that Interior Minister's company also benefited. Reports suggest that others in the Tinubu government got cash from this same ministry under the dubious Renewed Hope initiative. So he's saying that Betta Edu should not be the fall guy. Others who have remotely or Fuhad, wickedly benefited from money that was meant for poor Nigerians should also be fished out. So let's first look at the fact that in the first place, the fact that looking at the background of Betta Edu, that she wasn't according to Frank Shaibu now, that she wasn't the best man for the job. We had an Imam Ibrahim who had a wealth of experience that should have been appointed in that ministry, and the fact that the president put politics ahead of competence in his appointment of Betta Edu as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. So should this now be some sort of window into looking at the background of other ministers in the Renewed Hope administration?
Well, I was having this same conversation yesterday with a couple of people, and what they have said is that, look, I think we've so much brought down the bar to the point where today nobody regards a minister as anything too serious. While we were growing up, Sandra, a minister was seen as so high up there. When you look at ministers,
it should be, yes.
In fact, what some people will tell you is that, look, a minister is a potential president. As a minister, because again, you are like part of the kitchen cabinet of the president. You are the advisors of the president. You are taking decisions. You are running a whole ministry. You understand what I'm saying? So you must, in terms of your emotional intelligence, your intellectual capacity, you must be up there. The bar must be so high. For example, people have tried to make comparisons between the ministers of the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, the kinds of cabinet he was able to put together, the likes of Okonjo-Iweala, the other woman in education, the man in the CBN, Charles Soludo, the kinds of technocrats, experts he was able to caliber of people you found in his government. Honestly, if you have to juxtapose, if you have to do a one-on-one comparison to what you have now, I think it's more of political patronage that we have now. A lot of, we said it during the ministerial confirmation and screening, that a lot of these guys, I think there's 1 or 2, 3 technocrats here and there, if you ask me, but a lot of them, I think, came as a result of political consideration. But if you ask me about Betta Edu, look, there's always been this conversation as to getting the youth involved. More youth should be involved in governance. We should give them the opportunity to rule. Look, yesterday we're looking at France, Sandra, and we saw the young guy that had just been appointed as prime minister. I'm sure that guy is not up to 40 years. When Macron became the president of France, what was his age?
Was 37.
You understand what I'm saying? So Betta Edu also was the youngest. He's 37. And there's also this inclusion, female inclusion in governance. One had thought that, well, as the woman in of the 𝗃C, she's also a PhD holder, gender balance, and she was a former commissioner in Cross River State. So if people are saying she's not qualified, well, in terms of education, in terms of her exposure to politics, she has worked as commissioner in Cross River State, and she's been in politics for some time, and she's quite young and well educated. But when it comes to whatever it is, she has to answer to this allegation, because we have also what of Sadiya Farouk? Is Sadiya Farouk a young person? Corruption is corruption.
Yes, just to buttress what you have just said here, because we have a report here now that this scandal is way beyond whatever it is that is on the surface, because beyond Edu, beyond Sadiya Umar Farouk, the rogue element here is the problem is systemic corruption, and so we need to look at economic management, how our funds are being managed, generally speaking, by all these MDAs and all. So whether sufficient attention is being paid to issues of rational economic management or not, that seems to be the crux. Do you agree?
I agree completely, Sandra. It's systemic corruption, and you know why I'm really not too excited about this. Like I said, it's a good starting point if you can have some closure. to this particular investigation. And what is the closure I'm talking about? Investigation, prosecution, and then maybe something getting out of the courts as punishment. But what I'm saying is that, look, Sandra, we were here some few months ago or some few weeks ago when we were reviewing procurements of different states. Were we not here when we were reviewing the kinds of procurement states were doing across the country? We did that of Lagos, we talked about that of Oyo State, and some other states, Sandra. And didn't we see the ridiculous procurement patterns across the different states of the country? So it is because it is better edu, everybody is shouting, and the reality is that what we've seen of better edu runs across all different states, local government agencies, parastatals, and ministries. That is what we do. The leakages are there. The opportunities to mismanage public funds are there. The opportunities are wide open. It is just that this one has got into the public space. That's why everyone is talking. I'm sure in the minds of some of our politicians, they are like, what is the big deal about this? This is what we do every day. You understand what I'm saying? So it's systemic corruption. So beyond all of this better edu conversation, we need to sit down as a people to find a way to tackle systemic corruption and block leakages. If you bring another person to that ministry tomorrow, if you are not careful, the same thing will happen. So it's not limited to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. This is what we have across all the different states, local government ministries, parastatals, and agencies. Anybody can take me up on that. And that's why I said that weren't we here reviewing the procurement of the Lagos State government, as highlighted by the candidates of the ADC in Lagos? And didn't we touch on Oyo State too and other states and saw the reckless pattern by which public funds were being spent? So it's a general problem. It's not a better edu problem. It's a problem that we need to all address as a people and commit to solve it.
You just said something that it's a general problem. It's not a better edu problem. Finally, for just a minute, please. So do you see, because some people are of the opinion that better edu is just a fall guy for something bigger that is happening in this administration?
It's not impossible, Sandra, if you understand the murky waters of politics and the way we play it here. You know, probably I'm not making excuses for her. Whatever she did, she had to face the music. But probably she stepped on some toes. You don't understand? Because if you look at the Guardian report, they talked about the fact that the chief of staff was a referee while she was being screened as minister.
Yes.
And there are speculations that, well, maybe something had happened somewhere, or maybe she stepped on some toes. You know, there was also that conversation when this woman had the problem, the former minister of finance, 𝗪𝗪.
Yes.
And that's why the reason why her issue was brought to fore was that she had stepped on some toes and they were finding a way to deal with that. You understand? So again, it's not impossible that, you know, something had happened within the political space and then somebody wanted to make a mess of her. But the reality is, if she didn't do what she did, nobody will have anything to put on her. I'm also hearing that some people are saying that some people are trying to tackle Minister Lɪධᴇ, and that's why they are saying, look, don't let us come up with that crap. The reality is that he owns the company, even though he had resigned from the company 2019, still a shareholder in that company. And with the fact that the company now got about almost 400-something million from this particular scandalous contract, shows that there's a problem with conflict of interest and vested interest. You know, these are the things we talk about. You see all manner of contracts, Sandra, and you just shake your head. Consultants are getting huge amounts of money. Let us conclude by saying this, Sandra. How do you even start to award 3 billion for a social register? And then people are getting contracts to a tune of 200-something million, 100-something million to verify the list of a social register list. What is the big deal about coming up with a list and verifying it?
Well, better edu is not the only interesting conversation, because that's the major headline across the papers this morning. That's why, we had to expend so much time on that particular story. You're still listening to Trends in the Papers on mainland 98.3 FM. That's the major headline on the front page of The Guardian. You can get more details on page 6 of The Guardian newspaper. Now, moving on forward. This is a very interesting story. Tinubu slashes official trip expenses and entourage by 60%. And the president has ordered a 60% reduction in his travel expenses and number of officials on his entourage to any state and trips abroad. So he said that the notion of government wastage, the notion of recurrent expenditure being in excess, The notion that government officials will be allowed to conduct their affairs in a way that is different from what we are asking of Nigerian citizens, with respect to prudence and cost management. Also, we also have here, this is actually a very long one, the notion of, okay, yes, those days are over. And in the new development, the president said henceforth only 20 persons would accompany him on any official foreign trip. And the president has also approved 25 persons for his office, 15 for the vice president, 10 for the office of the first lady on official trips to any state within the country. So the president has pegged number of officials accompanying the vice president and wife of the vice president on official trips abroad to 5 persons only. So Fuhad, we're cutting costs as regards expenses. Should we applaud this or cautiously optimistic?
Yeah, it's a good way to start. There's still more that has to be done. Okay. If you understand, but of course we need to say, well, at least it's better than us not doing anything. And I think slow and steady, we may eventually win the war. When I say war now, war against corruption, wastages in government and all of that. And I think what Nigerians have been saying, what we have also been doing as the fortress state of the realm, seems to be yielding some results. It now shows that at least to a great extent people are listening to us. We've been talking about this sacrifice that the government has to show example. They have to read the room and show that they are also ready and willing to make sacrifices. You can't continue to tell Nigerians to make sacrifices, whereas people in government are behaving as if everything is just normal and doing the same old thing. So it's a good way to start. The president is saying that, look, 60% of entourage and all of that, protocol officers and all that is reviewed. And I think there are figures to what the president can, the entourage of the president, the vice president, ministers and all of that. So it's a good way to start. I think this is commendable, but there's a lot that still needs to be done. I also think that we need to reduce all of these unnecessary events, all these commissioning, banquets, luncheon, conferences. Some of them have no direct implications to governance. It's just a way of also making money and giving money to the boys. So there's a lot that we still need to do, a whole lot that we still need to do. But beyond all of that, we also have to look at appropriation of funds when it comes to procurement, purchases, and all of that. But a good way to start, I think, is commendable that the president is going on this direction. Maybe he's probably heard what the Malawian president said, and he's also taking a cue from
that. Yes, okay. Well, additionally, we also have here, when any international travel is being approved, the following limits have been placed on all ministers of the Federation. 4 members of their staff and appointees and the like will be allowed to travel with a minister on an official trip. For heads of agencies, 2 members of staff are allowed to travel on an official trip. Furthermore, sorry, Fuad, the numbers that the president has now approved for official travel with him that will apply to his principal staff are as follows. So, on international trips, the president has directed that no more than 20 individuals be allowed to travel with him. And that number has been cut down to 5 in the case of the First Lady. Additionally, the number in the entourage on official international trips for the Vice President will be cut to 5. The office of the wife of the Vice President is also 5. In terms of local trips, the President has approved a new limit of 25 members of staff to accompany him on domestic trips within the country. For the First Lady, it is now limited to 10 staff members. The Vice President, his has been limited to 15, while his wife, that's wife of the Vice President, has been limited to 10 members of staff. All right. So it's also important to note that there's a difference between the number of members of staff allowed to travel with the presiding officials to international trips and those that are allowed for domestic. All right, so it's also important for us to put that out there. As regards security, we also have the fact that security outfits within the states, be it police, DSS, or branches of the ministry, will frontline his protectives when he travels to those states. So if it comes to Lagos, for example, the security architecture in Lagos will be responsible for
take care of his security
here in Lagos State, basically. So major cost cutting cost-cutting initiative that will also affect the vice president, the office of the first lady, and the wife of the vice president as well. 60%. Well, the story is on page 3.
It makes a lot of sense, Sandra. It makes a lot of sense. But I think it needs to also add that, for example, the president is coming to Lagos, and all the governors will travel to Lagos to come and meet, and they come with their entourage. That has to stop too. You know, the man is coming to Lagos.
Yes,
the governor of Lagos is just receiving. The governor of Ogun State will leave. That of Oyo will leave. 𝗃ìtì will leave. Everybody comes. Even the ones in the east will also come, because the president is coming to Lagos. And they're also going to come with serious costs, because they're going to come with their entourage, with their commissioners. And so when you see the convoy of the president, you get confused, because the people you are seeing are people who are not even related to why he's in Lagos. And the same thing happens. He's going to Kano, for example. All of the governors in the north will go and meet him with their entourage. All that has to stop too.
Well, a little drop makes the mighty ocean. So step by step,
we are getting somewhere.
This is a good one. Especially from last year, when it was a lot of conversation as regards the fact that only Nigerian citizens are making sacrifices. What about of our leaders? Well, this is still trends in the papers. Let's move on now to the Punch newspaper. The major headline on the front page of the Punch: Humanitarian Ministry scandals. EFCC seizes Edu and former ministers' passports. Bank MDs grilled. Suspended minister barred from traveling. Yes, Fuhad. The ministers, both the former minister and the currently suspended minister of Humanitarian Affairs, their passports have been seized by EFCC, and Betta Edu can't travel out of the country. What do you make of this move?
Yeah, that's I think that's always the standard procedure. You know, again, when you're under serious investigation like this, the first thing you want to do is to ensure that they are not able to leave the country. So I think it's always the standard practice. Most likely, if Betta Edu now gets to the point where the investigation will lead to prosecution, then she would have to now find a way to legally defend herself. At that point, her lawyers will now begin to argue that she needs to get her passport back. You know the things with our politicians. One of the excuses they will give in court, before you know, they'll say she's sick. Something has happened. She needs medical attention. She needs to travel out to attend to herself, and all of that. You will see that. We are going to get to that conversation. If this case gets to the point where she is now prosecuted, or Farouk has to appear in court, you will see that their lawyers will take it to the court that they are sick, they need medical attention, they need to travel out to check one or two things, just to allow them have access to their passport and leave the country. But like I said, this is a developing story. We'll continue to follow it and see whether we can have some form of closure on this one.
I hope it's not just dust resting. Well, the story is on page 2.
It's not just raising dust and then settles and nothing happens. Yeah.
The story is on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. I can get more details there. Now, just here, we also have TB Joshua, SCON, the Synagogue Church of All Nations, faults BBC report. Ex-disciple faults knocks late prophet. So a public affairs analyst and member of the Synagogue Church of All Nations, Mr. Dare Adejimo, has faulted the BBC documentary on the founder of SCOAN, late Temitope Joshua, known as TB Joshua. They described the documentary as unfounded, noting that the characters interviewed in the report were unknown to the church. However, a former disciple of the prophet, Paul Agomo, who spoke to the BBC, insists that the allegations were true, adding that he had to go into hiding for 8 years after speaking out as his life was under threat. Fuhad, at least 25 people gave eyewitness accounts bordering on allegations of sexual assault, physical abuse, fake miracles, traumas that they have faced one way or the other. But what do you make of this this BBC report on the Synagogue Church of All Nations, TB Joshua, and the response they're giving now?
It's unfortunate that the major person in all of these controversies is
dead. Yeah.
That's the unfortunate thing. Whether we say it or not, it's tomorrow. The man at the center of it all is dead. And then for the man that is speaking for the Synagogue Church of All Nations, saying that these guys are not going to the church, I think you better have a rethink or not say anything so ridiculous as that. If you look at the interview, which I took the BBC report, I took my time to watch it completely. A lot of the guys that were interviewed, there were even videos of them workers of the church. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of them were even some of the media guys for the church. Some of them were workers in the church, and there were videos of them actively participating in different activities within the church. So the idea of they are not known to the Synagogue Church of One Nation, well, I don't know where that is coming from. But like I said, it's unfortunate that the man at the center of all of this so-called crisis is no more alive. So what do you do? But I want to say something, Sandra. When this building collapsed, the building collapsed, that was part of the documentary happened in the synagogue. There was a coroner inquest, Sandra, here in Lagos. And I was part of that coroner inquest. I witnessed the court proceedings on the coroner inquest. And at that time, I found ridiculous, completely ridiculous, the excuses that were being given by the church that that building was actually bombed. You know, they brought videos that a plane was flying very low and that the plane had bombed the building and all of that. Whereas in reality, it was discovered that that construction was completely faulty. Sandra, in that building collapsed, more than 100 people died.
Yes.
About 80-something South Africans died in that building.
Correct.
But the usual thing, did you get a closure to that investigation?
No.
Because when the thing happened, the governor of Lagos State at that time, Fashola, visited. Even Goodluck Jonathan, the president at that time, visited the church. And they were even treating TB Joshua like a VIP. Whereas if a building collapses anywhere in Lagos now, Sandra, the developer would be handcuffed immediately and be prosecuted. That's what the law says. So nothing happened. Most of the foreign nationals, they just came back. Some of them took their dead bodies. Some of them were buried. And the case was swept under the carpet. Because the coroner inquest was supposed to bring some form of closure and maybe prosecution to anybody that was culpable at that time. But nothing happened. The church moved on as if nothing had happened. So I'm not surprised that this documentary has now come up. But like I said, okay, what are we going to do with this documentary now?
Well, the story.
The man at the center of it all is dead.
Thank you very much, Fuhad. Just as you have highlighted, the man at the center of it all is dead, and also I don't know, but probably they should have a much more professional response or reaction to this particular situation, rather than what we are getting from the.
And I think as Africans, Sandra, we have messed up the idea of what religion is supposed to be. I think somehow Africans need to have an introspect as to what religion is supposed to be. We have modeled it up completely. We don't even know what we are doing.
I mean, I just really hear that there's some people paid BBC to come and do that report. That's an interesting one. Well,
they should go and watch the report. I'm sure a lot of you guys have not even watched that report. And I'm not saying that whatever is that report is true or not. That's not what we're saying. No. But people should go and at least watch it and then get themselves
before making
informed and take their own personal decisions on it.
Well, more details on page 7 of the Punch newspaper. The reaction of this member and public affairs analyst, this person, Mr. Dara Jujimo, to the BBC documentary. Above the masthead of the Punch, we have here Fuhad. NNPCL post over 2 trillion naira profit, and that story is on page 21 of the Punch newspaper. This is a very interesting one. Let's just quickly run through what that report is giving us here. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company on Tuesday said it made a profit of 2.5 trillion naira in 2022, describing it as the highest profit since the inception of the national oil firm. Wait, though. We're in 2024.
I'm listening to you. Yeah, no, they're talking about 2022.
Yes, I know. I'm trying to. Okay, and then. Sorry, apologies. Now, what we have here, in a document that was obtained by NNPCL, says that they actually posted a loss in 2018. They posted a loss as well in 2019, but then it grew in 2020, and in 2021 the profit also grew to 674 billion naira. And it's assuring to them that the profit has continued to grow, that in 2022 they were able to record a 2.5 trillion naira profit, and they say that this is their highest since inception. That inception is about 1977. NNPC was established in 1977. So this is actually a good one. But Fuad, we all know all of the many stories that we have recorded in recent times as regards the NNPCL. There's a lot of figures now that's been coming forward. There's one money that they were supposedly owing the federal government. There's some funds that have supposedly been paid to NNPCL when it was state owned. I don't know if it's still state owned. It's not. Is it state owned? Because now it's NNPCL, and there's supposed to be a board of directors making decisions. There's just a lot to take away from this. I don't know. Can you just help me out here?
You see, Sandra, if you go into all of that conversation, you're going to get more confused.
Okay.
And even experts within the industry have continued to raise questions as to the operations of the NNPCL. Again, the easiest thing to do is to compare the NNPCL today to Aramco of Saudi Arabia, which is supposed to be the model of operations of the NNPCL.
Yes.
If the NNPCL is saying they made 2.5 trillion naira, you probably have to compare it to what Aramco is doing in Saudi Arabia. You understand that we're just joking. The reality is that, look, you make profit. What does that translate to? What amount of remittances have we gotten from the NNPCL, for example, to the federal force? The issue of under recovery and recovery, how does that go into the profit? Or do you make money and then at the end of the year you sink it into other forms of procurement too? You understand what I'm saying? So as it is, the NNPCL is still not being run profitably. Because what you have is that, look, they make this money and then sink it back into other things. And that's why you keep hearing the conversation as to, we are doing a lot of recovery. We are recovering all our expenses. We are not borrowing. You understand? And that was what Ajibola was saying, that, look, we are now in an era where we are not necessarily borrowing, but we are not saving anything. If you understand that, as it is, what we are supposed to be borrowing, for example, to finance subsidy, which we were doing in the past, instead now we are not borrowing, but we're financing it from what we are now making. So subsidy is still bad. So when you talk about profit, you need to ask yourself, what does it financially translate to? Does it bring any fortune to the country? The reality is that, look, they make all of this money, it still goes back to the expenses of the oil company in terms of importation of PMS and all of these other things. So the reality is that there's still a lot that we need to do to get the benefit of being an oil producing nation. And as it is, there are still several questions that have remained unanswered as to the operations of the NNPCL.
Now, moving away from that report now, thank you very much, Fuad. Let's talk about illegal refineries, because in a recent post on the official X handle of NNPCL, it was stated that in the past week, 32 illegal pipeline connections were uncovered. And more worrisome is the 52 illegal refineries were destroyed in the Niger Delta. I'm more concerned about these illegal refineries and their destruction. But Abi, what do you think of that? Because we're okay.
If it is considered illegal, it's illegal. But what people are saying is that if the locals,
it's the destruction that's the fine, they've been uncovered. But do you think that the follow-up should be a destruction of these refineries?
It's sad that you look at some of these so-called refineries. The entire process is even detrimental to the environment.
Okay.
It's destructive to the environment.
Okay.
It's not anything that you even want to encourage. Because again, there's a lot of devastation to the immediate environment, the way these guys operate, a so-called illegal refinery. So it's not like a proper thing. It's just locals using local technology, and there's a massive destruction to the environment where these refineries are operating. So I understand where the government is coming from destroying this. But again, it's a form of economic sabotage, whether you like it or not. You get what I'm saying? But what people are saying is that, look, if locals can use such good technology to refine for diesel, refine for kerosene, refine for PMS, locals will, why is it so difficult for the government to run its own refinery? If locals can do all these local things and they are able to refine, still could and refine, the government with all of the capacity and all of that is not able to run its own refinery. You understand? And that also goes into having modular refineries. Can we encourage people to begin to set up small refineries and all of that? But again, we already highlighted why the modular refineries are not operational. They've talked about the fact that they can't get bank guarantees, they're not getting guarantees from government. that crude be supplied to them in naira. There's also the issue of forex and all of those kinds of things. So there's a bigger conversation as to what we should do. I think that with the legal refineries, if you even look at the environmental impact of the activities of these refineries, you would not want to encourage the government to leave them, no matter what anybody may want to come up with. But if you say those ones should not exist, where is the government own? And why is the government own not working? That's a big question.
All right. Thank you very much. More details on page 21 of the Punch newspaper. And finally, from the Punch, fake degrees. Federal government probes 107 private universities. Well, they are beginning to dig deeper into this degree mills that the conversation started around about 2 weeks ago or so, when the report came in that there are some universities in Benin, Togo, and even other parts of the world that have affiliate offices in Nigeria where you can get degrees in 6 weeks. So as it is now, private private universities in the country are now to be probed and looked into to check if there are no. I'm now concerned, but let's move on. Let's move on.
Concerned about what?
Nothing. It's okay. Fuhad. Thank you.
Your university is named in one of the universities.
It's not named. My university cannot be named. But let's move on.
When you say you are concerned and you are moving on, I'm suspicious. Maybe they've named your university.
I know I spent my full 4 years. I spent my full 4 years in school. Please, thank you very much.
That's not what I'm saying. Is your university named as one of those universities?
No, it's not. But they're looking at. I think it's all private universities, though. I think they're looking into all private universities in the country.
You went to a private university in Alexandria.
I can't remember. I don't think so. I can't remember. Please leave me. Moving on to Vanguard newspaper now. We have here the major headline still on the 585 million naira graft as regards 𝗪𝗪 and the fact that she was quizzed for a long time. And 𝗪𝗪, presidential candidate of the PDP in the 2023 general election, saying Edu's suspension commendable but not enough.
Speaking all the way from Dubai, through his representative, his spokesperson.
But he's speaking. Would you rather he doesn't?
No, I'm not saying. No, he should.
The story is on page 5 of Vanguard newspaper. Also, we have here federal government shuts third mainland bridge for 8 weeks for repair. And speaking of that particular story, this morning on the debut of the big talk by 10 a.m., we'll be having the Federal Controller of Works, Lagos, Engineer 𝗪𝗪𝗪 joining in for further conversation on that particular one. Because, I mean, the traffic that people have been experiencing for the past few days has been quite cumbersome. And also, aside from the third mainland bridge, what about inner roads in Lagos? What are the plans? Let's have that conversation by 10 a.m. With the Federal Controller of Works, Lagos, on the big talk. Well, the story for this one is on page 8 of Vanguard newspaper. And moving on, still on the front page of Vanguard, removal of fuel subsidy untimely. That's coming from Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde. And that story is on page 8 also of Vanguard newspaper. And finally, on the front page of The Nation, the story there, of course, is still as regards humanitarian affairs scandal. It's the biggest story as of now, especially as it's a federal story. So the story continues here on The Nation newspaper on page 4 of The Nation newspaper. And finally, this morning, I've been looking for this story, and it's here. The headline just above the masthead of The Nation: Rivers Assembly awaits Fubara's 2024 budget and others. So they're presenting the budget again in Rivers State. I was waiting for that story. It's on page 5 of The Nation newspaper, and that's all.
Still waiting.
Yes, for it to be represented. Yes, very important. Well, that's all for this morning on trends in the papers. Thank you very much, Fuhad. But please be on standby for Mainland Focus. We'll take a short break now. We'll be right back. This is Mainland 98.3 FM. The Morning Express continues.